Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chuck Everson, and welcome to the Big East Rewind with my partner in crime, the great Sonny Spera from Syracuse University. Good afternoon, Sonny. How are you?
Afternoon, Chuck. How we doing?
Well, today we got a really good show. We got two legendary players from the Big East. We got a guy from your team, the Syracuse Orangemen, and we've got the great Clive Vaughan, the 2,000-point scorer for Pittsburgh. And we had a lot of battles with those guys over the years. So we got Eugene Waldron with us today, and we got Clive Vaughan with us today. So why don't you go ahead and introduce Jeannie, and let's get this thing started.
All right. Well, my teammate and my point guard that we shared position with from Long Island City in Queens, New York. And Gene Waldron came in with a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure. Eddie Moss graduated, and Jeannie was expected to step in and fill those shoes. And I think he did a fine job. And he has the record for the most scoring points from a Syracuse Orangeman in the Carrier Dome.
Wow.
Welcome, my buddy, Jeannie Waldron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's right. Against who, Jeannie? Who's that against?
Huh?
Who was those points against?
I'm Mike and Anthony.
Iona.
Let's say that. 40
Iona.
points.
And also with us today from Pittsburgh, the great Clive Vaughan. And Clive, I got to tell you, when I was getting recruited by Pitt, Seth Greenberg comes to my house with a bunch of paraphernalia. Okay, one of which was a button about this big with your picture as Superman flying across the Clive Vaughan with a yellow Superman outfit with a blue cape and a blue P on the front for Pittsburgh. I never forget that. So I thought that was pretty interesting that he came in with that, you know. So Clive's with us today, and Jeannie. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for
Our
having
first
us.
Panther. We finally got a Panther.
We finally got a Panther on. That's great. So you guys were talking a little earlier. So, talk about, when you guys got recruited, and we all went through the process, and some of us went to 5-star, some of us went to other camps. You guys were just discussing off air all your time at 5-star. Let's go back and revisit that. Talk about when you guys were at 5-star and how you guys met.
Well, I didn't hear about Clyde, and I'm sure he probably didn't hear about me, but I think once we got there, once I got to 5-star, because originally I wasn't looking to go to 5-star. I actually got forced into going. It was like, it'll help you more college coaches to see you if you go to 5-star. But when I did get there, I had the great opportunity to team up with Clive Vaughan, and I found out who he was really quickly, because he wasn't no joke on the basketball court.
No.
And we just, we clicked on the court, and I think that's what helped us win a lot of games until we ran into Patrick Ewing. Then it all went downhill after that. But for the most part, that's my first recollection of meeting Clyde, and we just, stories go on after that. But I guess we'll get into that.
How about you, Clyde? You went to 5-star. Was that your main camp that you went to? And did you go to Holmesdale or the one I guess the other one's in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, I went to the one in Pittsburgh first, and believe it or not, I received the MVP award and was the all-time scorer for that camp. So then I said, wow, I could really do well. So then I was invited to the Holmesdale, because not a lot of people knew about Clive Vaughan from New Rochelle, New York's, in the suburbs of New York. And so, but when I went to camp, led the camp in scoring, received MVP. So Mr. Garfinkel said, look, we need to have you back. And that's what happened. And I went back and I met Gene, and we teamed up, and we was really good. It was really good. Yeah, we was really good.
Who was some of the big names that you guys played against in 5-star?
Wow, we had
Mike Mose.
I didn't mean for that to be a curveball, guys. I thought that would be an easy one.
Well, come on.
Patrick Ewing.
I'm getting old now. I can't remember back that far, but I can remember Mike Moses, Patrick Ewing, Clive Vaughan. You got me now. You got me.
I'm telling you. Wow.
So Clyde,
and what? For me, it was like when I was at 5-star, I was kind of like, I'm a New York City kid. I'm cocky. I don't care who you are. I didn't want to really know a lot of people, And I mean, Clyde was on my team, but I was one of those New York City kids. I'm like, I didn't pay too much attention to a lot of the name people who was there because I was too busy trying to do my thing, which that's what most New York City kids are like.
Right.
So Clyde, talk about you played at New Rochelle, right? Which is, I'm very familiar with that area. And when you were getting recruited, what were some of the other schools that were on your trail?
Well, you know what? I narrowed it down to Villanova. I narrowed it down to Syracuse. Of course, Pitt, St. John's, DePaul. And my visits was Syracuse, St. John's, DePaul, Auburn, and of course, Pittsburgh. I really wanted to go to Syracuse, believe it or not. But you had two players at my position, Eric Stanford and Tony Bruin. And so I said, look, it doesn't make sense. I go there and sit for a couple of years. So Seth Greenberg at the time was an assistant at in the Ivy League school. And then he got the job March of 1980. And I knew him from 5-star. So he said, look, Clyde, come and visit. I was getting ready to go to DePaul. I visited DePaul. They had Mark Aguirre. They was bigger than the Chicago Bulls at that time, even though they would lose in the first or second round. I went and visited Pitt, and they had a couple other players. But I knew after a year of learning college basketball, I have a chance to make a name for myself. So I decided to go to Pitt. But I really, really loved Jim Boeheim and Syracuse. That's the place. But we had two players, and they were going to play.
And on your visit, you were with somebody else, right?
Yeah, we visited 1979, visit Syracuse, and there's playing Illinois State. They barely won, and I was there with Gene, and I met Gene, of course, at 5-star, and we bonded. And of course, I knew about Gene before Long Island City, and him and Vic. And I knew about Vern and Tony and Marta Christie. So I knew the name. When you're in the suburbs, you hear about the good city kids. So we trying to make a name for ourselves, in the suburbs, and knew about Gene and Mike Moe and the Tolentine team and things like that. You hear about them.
Now, when you got to Pittsburgh, what did you find? Right, your head coach at the time was Evans, was Paul Evans?
No. It was he's passed since. It's Roy Chipman.
Roy Chipman.
Roy Chipman was a coach, and I went there, and I knew I'd learned for a year, and then after that, it'd be my show. So my first year was learning, average about 8-9 points, and then after that, at the time, was in the Eastern 8,
right,
which is now the Atlantic 10. And my sophomore year, I led the Eastern 8 in scoring. The Eastern 8 was at the time was very, very upset because we was going into Big East, going into my junior year. So they was very, very upset. But my freshman and sophomore year, we went to the NCAA tournament.
Well, I can tell you one thing as a Syracuse guy, when Pittsburgh joined the Big East, that was one of the happiest days of Gene in my life, because we were talking about joining Penn State and Pittsburgh in a football conference and leaving the Big East. And I'll never forget, it was after a game, Leo Eisner walks into the little reception area and he says to us, Pittsburgh joined the Big East. And it was probably one of our fondest moments, So that was a good time. Let me ask you a little bit now. So as you guys are now because you visited Big East schools. So was that something that was on your radar? Because you guys really would have been the freshman class in the Big East. Mm-hmm. Had you started at St. John's or Syracuse or Nova or one of those schools. Was that something that was on your mind? Hey, I want to play Big East ball, or was it just, Seth Greenberg?
Well, of course it wasn't up to me, but I think a lot at the time, Pitt was a football school. When you talk about Pitt football, you talk about Dan Marino, Hugh Green.
Tony
Dorsett. It was a football school, but they wanted to make a name. We had a good basketball team, not a great basketball team, but a good basketball team, and we just wanted to make that jump. And so I thought that move was a great move, to make to the Big East.
Well, I think, obviously 2,000 points. You did work when you were.
When I came into the Big East, they said, well, he led the Eastern 8 in scoring. He'd be okay. But that year, I led the Big East in scoring when we first came in. As a junior, led the Big East in scoring.
Well, I know when we matched up with you, you were a tough matchup. We had a hard time handling or dealing with you. I could tell you that right off the
Sure.
bat. I'll let Gene
It's
go
funny
back to you.
it's funny because 1 week we beat Syracuse, St. John's, and Georgetown in 1 week, and that was the stepping stone for us to really make a name for ourselves in the Big East my junior year, beating those 3 teams.
Yeah, the Pitt Panthers came on pretty strong right around that time, right?
Yeah.
So what about you, Gene? When you come out, you decide on Syracuse. From what were your choices? Where were you looking? What did you have it narrowed down to?
My choices were Georgia, Marquette, DePaul, USC. Funny enough, Canisius, but I was only visiting Canisius as a favor. I was never really going to go to that school, and obviously Syracuse. I really was interested in USC. I mean, they were losing some players, and I remember going there on a visit. And I remember I'm from the East Coast, and I'm out there, and the players took me out, and which I thought was, I thought they were going to be really good with me, and they wound up taking me out and leaving me at a party, and I just was there all by myself.
Really?
And I remember that next morning, I called my mom, and I told my mom, I was like, "Ma, these guys took me out and they left me." She called the coach and told him to fly me home that day. So that went down the tubes. But I really was interested in DePaul. They had Bradshaw, the point guard there. And when I went on a visit there with the Market Guy, they were really good with me. And I was really, really, really leaning towards them. And I think the thing that tipped it for me for Syracuse is that Eddie Moss was leaving. He was a senior. He was leaving. And plus, we had the Carrier Dome. And when you talk about the Carrier Dome, the first year, what it was gonna look like, and also, a little afraid of going away from home, far away from home. Syracuse probably was the best bet for me. So it came down to Syracuse and DePaul, and in the end, I just wanted to stay close, and Syracuse was a great opportunity for me.
You just mentioned, distance from home, yet all the schools you were looking at were a long way from Long Island City, brother,
Yeah, well, I was never going to go to St. John's because I like to run. St. John's wanted to play slow down. I think at the time, Villanova was playing slow down. I mean, there was a lot of schools I was interested in, but I had to find a school that fit my mold. And I like to get up and down and run. So, and really coming out of high school, I was more of a scorer than a point guard. And the one thing when I got to Syracuse, I realized really quick that Coach Boeheim was going to, tighten me up a little bit. I had to live with Leo, Tony, and Eric. So it was tough for me to get some shots, but I took on that role, like I had to. But I think coming out of high school, I was a little bit more of a scorer than a point guard. But things happened and it worked out.
It's
Clive, did you hear that? The point guard not getting enough shots. You heard that,
That's
right?
true. It's funny, Gene, because I'm a historian when it comes to basketball. And as I said before, DePaul did recruit me. Now, you mentioned the name Clyde. Clyde Bradshaw was from New Jersey. He was a lefty guard. And I could see why they recruited Gene very hard, because Clyde, he was a second-round draft choice out of DePaul. And his game was very similar. He was about 6 feet, 6'1", shorter than Gene. His game was very similar to Gene, and he was leaving. So, I mean, anyone that look at Clyde Bradshaw, lefty guard out of New Jersey, they'll see why they recruited Gene very hard, because they wanted a replacement.
Yeah.
So talk about your time now. Now you're in the Big East, Clive. Let's go back to Pittsburgh and the Big East, right? So you guys had some success. I remember that was not a place that we enjoyed playing, your field house, by the way.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Nobody liked it.
But definitely, we seated about 6,500, and every team that came in there, they had a tough time. They had a really tough time playing, and we was excited. I mean, the Big East, that was the best conference in the country. You talk about players coming out of the Big East at that time, it was the best conference. So every team that came in there knew that they had a game. They had a tough game, and it was not going to be easy playing Pittsburgh Panthers.
What's tough about that arena, too, is there was no give to the floor. It was a wood floor and everything, but it was no give. It was like playing on cement, kind of. There was no bounce or anything. That's what I remember.
That floor probably was from the 1950s, right? And there was no give. and your knees will be hurting after. I mean, it was tough, but that was our home court, and we enjoyed a lot of big wins in that Fitzgerald Fieldhouse.
You certainly did.
I remember coming up in the middle, like you came up through the middle aisle area, and then that's where you got into the court from down.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was almost like you were like looking for your seat. No, wait a second, we're coming in. You know,
yeah. There's built in the track. There was the track, if you remember, the track around the court.
Yeah. So now when you're playing, right? And you guys, now obviously you're going to start recruiting, you're going to start bringing in some other talent, right? Now, did you have to adapt your game, or what modifications do you think that you made as you guys started to bring in some other players?
Well, I didn't. Every year they recruited players to take my position. Believe it or not, I averaged 18 points my sophomore year, 22 my junior year. You're bringing in players, but I was a scorer. I was going to score. Gene knew that. Gene knew that when I get the ball, I'm not passing it back. Ask him about England. I'm not passing the ball back. I'm going to score. And I remember once Roy Chipman, he says, "Clyde, I did not bring you in here to pass the ball." He didn't know I couldn't pass, but I brought you here to score, and that's what I did.
Now you predominantly played the three, but did they move you over to the four sometimes with Jerome Lane? I mean, what was it?
No, I was so strong that I could always post up.
Right.
So I could shoot the ball and I could post up. And I had long arms. So I'd get my shot over anybody. And I had confidence every time I shot the ball, it was going to go in. So if I had to post up, I post up. If I had to step out and shoot the jumper, shoot the jumper. I wish they had the three-point line, because if I had that, I always teach Charles Smith, I wouldn't be the second all-time leading scorer. I'd be the all-time leading scorer, because he beat me his last game against Vanderbilt. So Charles have 20, 45. I have 20, 33. But if they had the three-point line, it would have been over.
It would have been over.
Oh, no.
Especially against Syracuse in their 2-3 zone. Oh, it would have been over.
Now you're going to get Gene going.
Their 2-3 zone that they play like a man-to-man, but 2-3.
Yeah, I mean, Gene, talk about that for a minute. You guys ran a lot of the zone, right?
We played some man-to-man. Go ahead, Gene. Go ahead.
In practice. That's about it.
You guys, your memory's a little foggy. Go ahead, Gene.
I'm still playing the zone. Come on, you guys played. It's a matchup zone. Talk about what Coach Boeheim's philosophy was on the defensive side of the floor for a second.
Well, I think basically, more times than none, it was to get you to shoot a bad shot. Keep you from getting the ball inside, especially if you're keeping you from getting the ball in the middle and then passing it out to a shooter. But people call it a 2-3, but it could be a 2-2-1. It could be a 1. It could be so many different things. And the main goal is to find the shooters. If you stop the shooters, then you got a great chance of winning the basketball game. And that was his philosophy. Make sure you find the shooters. And then there was even times that you would actually get out to the shooters, and that wasn't enough. You would come out the game. If a shooter got it in, you would come out the game. So his main purpose was to make sure that you made it tough for the offense on the outside, and make sure the ball didn't get on the inside, because that's where, we get hurt a lot of the times. But, for somebody that's been doing that for so many years, and to this day, it's still being effective, goes to show how effective it really was. And that is.
That was before the three, right? So, you didn't have as much of an advantage shooting the three outside, right? So, teams like, where Clive is posting up, or where Patrick is posting up, or where those guys are getting in the middle, that was what we had to do, because we played. Andre was our center. He's not really a true center.
Exactly. But, we did a heck of a job playing that zone, even though they didn't have the 3-point line. But if you look how tight we had that zone. It was really tight. It's not so spread out as it is now because of the 3-point line. We did a really good job in doing that. But if a player or a team got hot, sometimes it got difficult, and that's with any zone. But for the most part, he's never going to give that up, because it works.
He's got over 1,000 wins. Why should he?
Exactly.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Here you go.
The only people upset are Syracuse fans. Like the only people that are upset about it are the Syracuse fans who just go ballistic. Like, we got to play, man. Shut up, man. Just let them coach, right?
Yeah. We're we played we did play a little man at times. You know, sometimes we had to press.
We pressed.
We had to get back into the game. You know, sometimes we had to press, and that seemed to. And you know, it's so strange, Sonny. Everything that we did back then, we're still doing it now, and it's still effective.
Hasn't changed. It really hasn't.
Changed.
It's extended a little more, but you're right. It's so similar.
It really hasn't changed.
Certainly, the offense hasn't changed much.
Oh no.
So Clive, who were some of your favorite opponents that you play? Who would you see on the score? Like, okay, listen, we're going to face up against Boston College. You know, I like the matchup. What were some of the teams?
Well, mine at Villanova was Hal Presley because I knew he'd be guarding me. I knew Hal was going to guard me. Of course, when we played St. John's, it was Billy Goodwin. You know, when we played Syracuse, you had Eric and you had Tony. So, I mean, and sometimes Boston College at times, I don't know why, 6'11", Jay Murphy, maybe because he had long arms.
Right.
You know, so, but when I played St. John's, I wanted Chris Mullins. I wanted him. You know, you look at Chris and you said he couldn't do this. He's slow. He can't jump. And he ended up with 25, 30, 6, 7 assists.
Right.
But, you know, every night you was playing against somebody good. You go against Georgetown, you know, it was every night it was somebody good. It was unbelievable.
How about some of the arenas? What are some of your memories in some of the places you played?
Well, I didn't have memories about arenas because I knew when I go in, I'm going to get 25, 30 points. That was my goal. How's the rim? How's the rim? Is it soft?
I'm gonna get mine.
How's the bounce? You know, that's I don't worry about the fans. I didn't see it. I just saw when I get the ball, Clyde, put it in the basket.
Well, were any of the rims more friendly than other rims?
Believe it or not, I love Syracuse because I knew that 2-3. I knew they was gonna play a 2-3. It was most teams. Villanova didn't, but most teams would play a box and one, and I knew Syracuse was gonna play that 2-3. Now I have to find the seam, find exactly where I'm gonna shoot the ball, try and get the ball in the middle. You know, so I love Syracuse. I love the dome. You know, and then you're going in there, and there's 25,000 people, and you can't beat that.
Yeah, coach used to say, "You stop Clyde, we gonna win." It didn't always work though.
True. That's true. Gene, tell us some of the stories. Like when you get into the Big East, now we get into the tournament time, Big East tournament time. Tell us some stories about some of the matchups that you guys had that were memorable for you.
I think for me, probably some of the toughest matchups for me was going against Michael Adams. You know, he was at Boston College. He was a real tough guy to match up with. You know, and then also me coming in as a freshman, I was going up against Sleepy Floyd, John Bagley, Stuart Granger. And here I'm coming out of high school, and I'm like, nah, I got these guys. Those guys taught me a real lesson my freshman year. The battles were just so intense, and it was for me was at times as a freshman going into the game knowing that I had to guard a Sleepy Floyd or a Stuart Granger. It was nerve-wracking, but you know you had to pull your socks up and do what you had to do. But Michael Adams was a tough kid to go up against. Carl Hobbs was a tough one at UConn. He was really great. He used to give me fits. Me and him didn't ever hit it off too well. He was a tough.
He was a camp also. He was a camp.
Yeah. He was a tough one. There was a couple of them, but for the most part, I think my freshman year was an eye opener for me in terms of thinking that you're really not that good. You got to put some work in compared to some of the guys that I was going up against. I can remember growing up, at times when we did play man, trying to guard Bagley, it was just impossible. I was 155 pounds as a freshman. And he was
Canandrillo at Seton Hall in?
I think yes, he was tough. But Bagley was, he was so good with the basketball, and he was a senior, stocky. I was just bouncing off of him. So you know that.
I know. He was a physical
Bagley
specimen.
was deceptively quick, for a guy his size. He was like a pipsqueak. He was a big guy playing back there in the front.
He had a great base. Yeah,
and Mike too. Mike gave everybody fits, not just Eugene. Especially in that bandbox that they played.
Oh, man, he was a water bug.
Like a water bug. Yeah, exactly.
He was a water bug. He was Because I had to cover the same guys. I didn't enjoy it either.
Yeah.
So Clive, now when you guys are playing, let's say now the Big East. So you only experienced the tournament in the Garden, right? What was it like to be on that stage and playing against some of those competitive games? Talk about that.
Well, it's funny because the 2 years was in Big East, we lost to St. John's and Villanova in the first round. So we weren't too successful in the Big East tournament. My 2 years in the Big East. So we lost to Villanova, I think, by 5 or 6, St. John's by 5 or 6. So it wasn't a great experience for the Pitt Panthers while I was there. But after that, after Charles Smith and Jerome Lane came in, they were a little bit more successful in the Big East tournament.
But when you guys are playing now, that's close to home for you, right? So that brings.
Oh, definitely. Oh, I had. It's funny. We lost my senior year. We lost to Villanova in the first round of the Big East tournament. I had about 26, 27 family members at that game. And that was the first time my dad saw me play. And he was on the sideline, but that's my son. That's my son. I was yelling to my mom, tell him to calm down, calm down. When we lost that game, he died, I don't care, that's my son. But that was playing in the Garden was great.
That's a great experience.
Because, when we was playing the St. John's, we wouldn't play in the Garden. We're playing the little Coliseum, I guess you call it, that they had. Yeah, so we didn't play regular season games in the Garden. But it was, when it comes tournament time, that was big.
Any experiences that you want to talk about or share? Because I remember a couple things that Chuck and I have touched on too, is like the Big East luncheon, and sitting around with players of all the different teams. Was there any experiences that you had, or just for kind of that you remember?
Yeah, just being around the players and all the great players. Because at that time, the Big East was, as I said before, was the best conference in the country, and just seeing Patrick and seeing friends like Gene and Carl and Chris Mullins, and to me that was the best feeling. That was believe it or not, those 2 years was unbelievable for me as far as feeling and playing in the Big East. I think it was 9 teams at the time, and it was a basketball conference. Even though we had football, it was great. It was a basketball conference. And seeing all my friends from 5-star and around, it was a great thing. It was a great thing.
Now, I do have to ask you, because we did have a couple of Georgetown guys on it, and it turns out they're actually pretty good guys. So I'm going to have a little mea culpa here. So they broke the mold a little bit on us. What was Pittsburgh's feeling about Georgetown? Because I can tell you Syracuse's feeling, but why don't you tell me a little bit about your feeling?
Well, we thought they was a little cocky. I didn't, because Gene was, was a friend, and and then you have Patrick Ewing, and you have Big John. And when we beat them my junior year, we broke everything, and we started to feel that we could play with them. But the feeling was Georgetown it was Big East and Georgetown. And so our feelings was a little, shouldn't be that way, but we felt they was a little cocky.
Okay. Gene,
but I love the guys. I love the guys.
Okay. Gene, you want to touch on Georgetown and our love of Georgetown?
Well, Sonny, there was never been any love for Georgetown. I mean, the battles that we had with them were always intense, and I think it even actually started. Both coaches even were like that as well. So if both coaches were like that with each other, the players were going to be the same way. There were games at the Dome where the atmosphere and the intensity, the games got so heated. I mean, there was times where Pearl almost got into a fight. Andre get into a fight with Patrick Ewing. There was no love lost between them. But you know what? The great thing about those rivalry games with Georgetown, after the game, we were all cool with each other. But once we stepped on the court, it was no love whatsoever. And I'll never forget that Big East game at the Garden when we lost to them in overtime. That was that was Sean and I's last. That was our last Big East game, and I remember having that ball and I was saying to myself when we came out that time, I was like, I'm going to shoot this basketball, and I got by the guard and I got close to the foul line, and then Patrick Eugene standing right there. And I kicked that ball to Sean in the corner. I was like, this is money. And it rimmed in and rimmed out. Oh.
That's his shot.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. That's his shot.
Jeannie Smith reminded me the other day about it.
Yeah,
Just
right.
you know, he
rubbed
just
a
put it
little
in. He
salt in
turned
that
it a
one,
little
Gene.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that one never goes away. You know, that one never really. And then also, I remember guarding Michael Jackson, and I mean, yeah, I never really got lit up that bad, but he lit me up for. I think he had something like 30 or 31 or something, and then he lit me up pretty good. I'm not ashamed to say.
There was an incident during that game, Gene, with Mike, Graham, and Andre. Was that the game? That was the game when there was.
That was the game.
That was the game, right? So
that was the game.
There was a little incident in that
game. Actually got thrown out.
Yep.
Well, you know what's funny, because we had all three people involved with that game on. We had Froggy on, we had Mike on, and Mike and Andre were together actually talking about it, which was kind of interesting. I'd like to hear your take, though. What happened when?
You know what? All I know, they were fighting for a rebound, and Andre would dive after any. Andre is going to dive after any ball. He goes after anything, and they both went after it, and it got a little physical. I want to say Graham kind of swung first, and Andre jumped up. You know, Andre ain't gonna back down from nobody.
Right.
But you know, with the swing, should have been an injection or something. But Froggy, you know, he was never a big SU fan anyway, so you know, nothing never came of that. But you know, that was just how bad. That's how intense the rivalry was between Georgetown and us.
Yeah, it was just another night in the Big East, right?
That's it.
The game was physical. Talk about both of you guys. Talk about the physicality when coming into the Big East. In high school, look, I know you're from the city and all of that. I know it's physical ball in the city too. You know, Clyde, the same with you. I mean, New Rock, I know they're physical there, but nothing like you saw when you stepped on the court in the Big East, right?
Well, in the Big East, every night, especially me, I was going to have the best defensive player on me. I mean, Georgetown, we had Billy Martin. You know, I seen boxing one, but it was physical. I mean, it's not like today where they won this high-scoring game. It was physical where you was getting pushed, you getting touched, and there was no calls. So you had to get used to it, you know. So for me, and plus I was a big guy then. You know, I was 6'4", 225 playing then. So it was okay for me. I love the physical part of the Big East. Every night I know it's going to be a tough night physical, and I'm going to have the best defensive player on me. So, you know, for me, I enjoyed it.
I struggled a little bit with it because I wasn't that physical. I mean, my freshman year I was 155 pounds, you know, and I think I played at 175. So there was some games that after the game, because it was so physical, I mean, ice all over. But you know, it was a thing. It really prepared you, though. You know, it prepared you to, you know, be tough. It really did. You know, that was the one thing about the Big East. If you wasn't tough, you was not going to last in the Big East. You'd be sitting and watching.
But do you remember any moments where your coach really got into it with another coach?
Well, Roy Chipman Roy Chipman was maybe 5'6" with heels on. And so he had to, you know, it was funny when he's standing there with John Thompson, and he'd always say, I'm not taking no mess from him or Jim Boeheim. We coming from the Eastern A, and they think we're softy. Now, I'm not taking no mess, and you as players do not. And so we had to stand the ground. Sometimes we didn't want to, but we had to. Coming in from the Eastern A to the Big East, we had to.
Yeah, there's just some classic coaching matchups. You know, Carnesecca, Massimino. You know, I mean, right down the line. You know, we Coach B and Coach Thompson. They had some legendary meetings on the sideline. We'll call them.
Yeah. Very meaningful meetings.
Yeah.
How many years Coach B's been coaching?
45.
Wow, head coach?
Head coach. And he was an assistant before that.
Assistant before that.
Yeah. He's been at Syracuse since the 60s because he graduated and then he stayed as a grad assistant. You know, he's been in Syracuse since 60. So what's that?
A lot of people don't know that. He started off, he was a golf coach at first.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm. How about that? I didn't know that.
And he's having a good time now watching his son who could really play.
Oh, yeah.
He could shoot it, that's for sure.
He's as hot as a pistol right now, that's for sure.
Yep. So
Fun.
you guys eventually find yourselves as teammates again in England, in the professional leagues in England. Talk about that for a minute, Clive.
You know, I was drafted by the Pacers, and I thought I was gonna make it. I thought I was gonna make the Pacers. Then I got cut, right, in veterans camp, and I was born in England, and I didn't know they had basketball in England until 1983. I was invited as one of 50 players to play on the try out for the Pan Am team.
Okay.
And they asked me for my passport to go to practice, and I had a British passport. They said, "You can't play for the U.S. You got to play for England." I said, "England? They got basketball in England?" So then I ended up playing, and they wasn't in the Pan Am. They was in the World Student Games. And so, matter of fact, I played against Ed Pickney because he played in the World Student Games in '83,
Right.
Edmonton, Canada. And the rest was history. So there was teams bidding for me to play in England if I didn't make the NBA, because I had that British passport and I could play with 2 Americans. And I played with 2 Americans when I went to Leicester, which was Tom Brown. What's Tom's last name?
Brown.
Tom Brown from Seton Hall, and of course Gene. And then they had Dixon, who was from Syracuse,
Hobbs,
and he was the head coach. And he was the head coach. So the rest was history. We went to England, played Gene, and Gene showed me around. It was funny. I was staying in a hotel at the time, a Holiday Inn, and I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. And the time difference. So,
You're in
oh
trouble.
my goodness, because I left England when I was 9 years old and didn't go back until I went back in '84, in October of '84. So I'm learning how to drive, and oh man, it was a mess. But you know, Gene took me on his wing, and you know, but Gene would always say, "Clyde, pass the ball."
Yes, I did.
I was shooting every time. He said, "Come on, Clyde, pass the ball." I said, "Gene, I don't pass. Just get me the ball and you get an assist." No. Pass the ball.
Let me ask you.
We had a good run, though. We had a really good team over there. And I can remember when they were thinking about getting Clyde to come over, and I was like, "You have to get him. We have to get him." You know, and we had me and Tom were the 2 Americans, so we really had 3 Americans on our team. If you want to really, think about it. And the league was just up and coming. It was a tough league, but we had some really, really good games, and we had a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun over there.
You know, it's a great place to play. I also played in England. I played for Derby in England.
Did you?
I certainly did. Yep. And I played with Ed Coe from Temple, and a guy named Kenny Chance was our dual citizen. And they had some crazy courts there over there, as you guys can attest to. We played on a tile floor, and we played on an indoor-outdoor carpeted rug. It was
Leicester.
You couldn't hear the sneakers squeak. You couldn't hear the ball bounce. You don't know. You have no idea what's going on, because sometimes you can tell when the sneakers are squeaking or what's happening. You know. So I mean, it was a wild place to play.
So you was close to Leicester. So you've been to Leicester then, because it was right there. Derby and Leicester's right there.
Yep.
Yeah, Granby Halls.
Yes.
So I got to ask you.
I tell you what, you know what really threw me too, and I'll tell you something funny was after the game, the first thing we all do from the States is you want something cold to drink. Yes. They all thought I was crazy. They told me I should have hot tea to cool my body. Hot tea? That's not going to work. You know. Do you guys have similar experiences there with some of those places that you played?
Well, it brought back a lot of memories to me because I was born there. You know, and I left when I was 9 years old, and I never drank. My father was an alcoholic, so I never drank. Up to this day, I've never had that a drink like that. So I'd always be the driver, but I always went out because after everyone's going to the pub or everybody's gonna get some fish and chips, right, Gene?
Yeah,
and so yes. And so the experience, I played 8 years over there. Then my back went out, and I had to retire, but I really enjoyed. I went from there to a place called Sunderland, which is the Northeast, and I played up there with a guy named Steve Bucknell, who played in the NBA for about a year. He played in North Carolina, and also Russ Saunders that played big time college basketball. So I had some really good experience in England.
So Clive, while we're talking, you had some other Big East experience too. You coached for a little bit, right, in the Big East?
Oh yeah. I coached at UConn, won the national championship 2004. That was the year that was the first year that women and men won it the same year.
Same year.
At UConn, and working for Coach Calhoun, there's nothing like it. I mean, he's a great person. And, we had, on that team, we had 6 NBA players.
Yeah,
we
had Ron Butler on, and he was talking about his relationship with Calhoun too, and he couldn't say enough great things about Coach Calhoun.
He is the best. Now, the 40 minutes of the game, he's a monster. He's a monster. But other than that, he's the greatest. He's the greatest. I mean, he's the father figure, and Seth Greenberg, who I'm very, very close to. I talk to at least once a week. Those are 2 people that I really look up to in the basketball world.
When they signed you, I got to ask you this question because I'm just curious. So, as a British national, was your pay different than Genie's? Did you get paid a little bit more?
Yeah, I was the highest paid player in the country.
Yeah, okay,
because because and my money had to be sent a certain way, and they, not too many people knew about that. But because if Gene was born in first of all, I don't know why Gene played in England, because he could have played in the NBA. He could have played somewhere in the continent that was big. For me, I could make a lot of money playing in England. Now, if they had what they called that back then, 4 or 5 years after I finished playing at Bozeman rule, where if you was born in England, or Europe, you could play anywhere. Oh, I wouldn't have played in England. I'd have played in the continent, in Greece or Italy or Spain, because I had that passport, European passport. But Gene, he should have played somewhere else. I mean, because he was that type of player.
It's nice to know.
What was the
no. You was good. You was good. You was good.
What were the big differences, Clive, between 2004 and when you were playing versus when you were coaching in the Big East? Was it pretty much business as usual in the Big East, or did the game change a little bit from when you were playing to when you were coaching?
Well, the game for me changed a little bit because when I'm in UConn, I'm coaching pros. You talk about, Emeka Okafor, Charlie Villanueva, Josh Boone, Ben Gordon, Marcus Williams. You playing, those are pros playing. Where at UConn, at Pittsburgh, we didn't really have pros. So it was different. And then also working for Jim Boeheim, I wish I did, for Jim Calhoun, there's nothing like it. And when you're at UConn, you recruit the top players in the country. So I'm going everywhere recruiting the top players. And we knew we had a chance to win a national championship every year. So at UConn, we had that chance. At Pitt, we knew we were trying to get to the tournament. So there was a big difference. I go into home with Coach Calhoun. We knew we had a chance to get the recruit. I mean, there's nothing like, working at UConn. That's just and you're talking about 2 Hall of Fame coach, Gino Auriemma, who was my next door neighbor, and Coach Calhoun. And so,
no doubt.
It was unbelievable.
Now, one of the things that people asked us that we have been remiss on some other shows is so what are you guys up to now? So, Clive, I know a little bit. Why don't you share with everybody what you're doing now?
Well, right now I'm a director of an agency, part-time director of an agency that service adults and kids with mental disability, emotional disability. But that's part-time with my food truck now in the 2nd year. I started it last year, did it for 3 months, but now it's, I'm branching. I'm getting a 2nd truck. I'm gonna have that down in Florida. And this truck, which it's a 30-foot truck, and we're serving all those food. So I'm in the food business right now.
You want to say how you got into it or what it means?
It's funny because Mama Licious means a mother that could cook. My mother, coming up, she was a cook. She was a foster mother for 90 kids in 30 years. So she started in a home. She started with 1 kid in the home, 2 kids in the home, 3. Then she started buying homes. And now my mother passed away, and my sister took over, and they have 8 group homes with kids. And so I just wanted something to honor her. She passed away 4 years. I wanted to honor her. So that's why I got a food truck, and then all the recipes are hers. So believe it or not, my cooks, I have 4 full-time cooks in the truck, and they don't know the recipes. So I prep all the food, and they'll warm it up, and they serve. They don't have the recipes.
Smart
and
man.
Now we're branched all over the place.
Smart man, because you can't really copyright it, but you know what? You can protect it. Smart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Genie, tell us what you're up to.
Well, for the last, I want to say for the last 4 or 5 years, I've just been doing personal training, kids and basketball through the YMCA. I also do it on my own. Um, and it's something that's like really rewarding to me that I can give back to the community. I mean, because there was a time where I wasn't able to do that. And Sonny, you know my story. There was a time where I couldn't put my right foot in front of my left foot, and I had to do some things to sort that out. But that now that life has changed and life has gotten really good, I'm able to actually do something and give something back to the community. And I don't do it for the money. And I do it just because I want to give back. And that's a great reward that I have for myself. And it's going pretty well. I've got a lot of clients, and I do it, and I do all my stuff. I do it one day at a time. And I stay focused. I try to eat well. I exercise, and and you and I, we've talked about this a lot of times. I don't never want to go back to that person that I used to be, and what that was like. And so I'm just so grateful right now that I could be sitting here alive, having these great conversations with you guys, and know that I'm good, and that's more important than anything to me right now.
Yeah, and I had no idea what we say, right? You have no idea the trouble someone's dealing with in their life, right? I had no idea. We've been friends for 30 some odd 40 years almost, and I had no idea that was a part of you until you shared that. And it's just amazing, and I'm 100% on board day at a time.
Yep, sure is.
Well, I got to tell you guys, what a perfect way to end another great episode of the Big East Rewind, with you guys talking about what you're doing to help others, the disabled community, and where you're working, Gene. It's awesome that you guys are doing that kind of work. It really is. And it's, it just shows, the whole group of guys that we've talked to so far, everybody is done very well, and they're successful in their own way, which is great. And everybody's able to take care of their families, and there are a lot of the guys are all giving back because they've all gotten so much from this great game of basketball. So it's awesome to see that you guys are both giving back. And thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate both you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, Clyde, you take care. You in Chicago? My son lives there. I'm about to tell him to come find your truck.
And I want you to come out too, Gene, right outside Chicago. Come out. Mama Licious food truck. Mama Licious JNC 2020.
You got it.
That's the Instagram.
There we go.
So this has been the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on YouTube. You can type in Big East Rewind and you'll see all the episodes that we've posted so far. Please don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, or you'd like to make some suggestions to Sonny and I, you can reach us at bigeastrewind@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for joining us today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Peace out, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.